Good morning, everyone. It really is an honor to be here in front of so many educators who are making such a difference in the lives of children really throughout the world and ensuring a strong Jewish future. I also want to thank the Zionist Federation for the invitation and for the hospitality, and also to the World Zionist Organization for enabling me to come. My trip from being an American educator to the Knesset actually began in November 2003 when a group of philanthropists in the greater Washington area got together and they said, here we are, we're trying to teach our children about Israel, inspire our children about Israel. The best thing we can do to accomplish that mission is to actually go on a school mission to Israel. And they sponsored this trip, 11 days in Israel for the entire high school, about 250 students, and they wanted some of the teachers to go along. So they offered myself and my wife the opportunity to travel to Israel as chaperones on this trip, and it was an opportunity we couldn't turn down. And we started the trip up north, and then we worked our way slowly towards Yerushalayim. And it was nighttime, we're in this bus, we had been already connecting to the land, and the bus is making its way up the hills towards Yerushalayim. They had Naomi Shemer's recording Yerushalayim Shel Zahav playing in the background, and my wife and I were sitting next to each other on this bus, and tears are streaming down our cheeks. So I played the role of the very proud male, and I said, boy, these allergies in the Jerusalem hills are really something this time of year. But at a certain point, I had to confront the reality that something was pulling on us at a very deep level. Our oldest child at the time was 6, and we decided we're going to take the plunge and try to move to Israel. I was a teacher of Judaic Studies in the Berman Hebrew Academy in Rockville, Maryland, and I was also the Israel Guidance Counselor. Any Israel Guidance Counselors out there, take note of this story. As every yeshiva and seminary was coming through, I did my regular responsibility in terms of having to meet with the students, and then I closed the door of my office and I said, are you looking to hire anybody? And was very fortunate to find a job teaching in post-high school gap year programs in Israel. Dream job for an educator, I'll touch on that in a moment. And there we found ourselves in July 2004 at JFK Airport with over 300 other people who were making Aliyah. It was the Nefesh B'Nefesh, the second flight of Nefesh B'Nefesh. This incredible, incredible ceremony at the airport where we say goodbye to our families. And actually, Rabbi Josh Fass of Nefesh B'Nefesh said something at that ceremony which has changed my tefillah every single morning since then. I think about this when I say these words. He said, every day in davening we say, V'tolichenu kamamiyut la'artzeinu. And he said, what does that mean? We'll go upright. And for generations, they probably wondered, what does that mean exactly? We'll go upright. And the founding of the state of Israel was not from people who went V'tolichenu kamamiyut la'artzeinu. They came to the land broken, forlorn, in mourning, persecuted, chased. And he said, look at this. We're standing here proudly, by choice, getting onto a beautiful jumbo jet, and we're on our way, standing proudly by choice, going to the land of Israel. We got into the airplane, we're getting our children settled. We had the distinction of having the youngest passenger making Aliyah. Our daughter was 6 weeks old at the time, and we just celebrated her bat mitzvah in Israel. And we're getting our children settled in the plane, and the pilot begins to speak to us. And he goes through the regular routine you hear every time you fly. And at the very end, the pilot says, now everybody sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight. I'm here to take you home. And he said those words, and it hit me so hard that here we were, after 2,000 years of going from country to country and continent to continent, being chased, persecuted, thrown out, running away. Here we were, not running away from something in the United States, but running to something, and actually coming back home. We settled in Beit Shemesh. For those of you who know the story of Beit Shemesh, and if you've heard about it in the news, the reason why we chose Beit Shemesh is quite comical. I was there on a pilot trip, and my cousin was driving me around Beit Shemesh, And I saw so many different populations, Haredim and Chilonim, Sfaradim, Ashkenazim, Russian immigrants, Ethiopian immigrants, English-speaking immigrants, Dati Leumi. And I called my wife and I said, we have to live in Beit Shemesh to show our children how all different types of Jews from all kinds of populations live together and get along with one another and kibbutz galiot. And I learned very quickly in Beit Shemesh that this wasn't the case. We moved to a remarkable country. It was 56 years old at the time. Everything was handed to us on a silver platter. Really, as I take cabs in Israel or bus rides, I turn to the drivers, I turn to people around me, and I always say to people who I know are veteran Israelis, thank you so much for building this country and just handing it to me. Here it is, through blood, sweat, and tears, 56 years they were building this country, and it was there for my family to enjoy. Teaching in various institutions, literally a dream job for an educator. All the students that are in your room want to be there. No classroom management issues, just go into the room, teach Torah, teach about the land of Israel. It was really a remarkable time. But we discovered that there's one major problem that Israel has on an internal domestic level. And that is, how do you take Jews from 2,000 years of different cultural experiences, religious experiences, national experiences, put them in the small little area we call Israel, and find a way to get along with one another. Very difficult task. And in Beit Shemesh, we really experienced this in a very challenging way. Just a few months after we moved, I heard a commotion on the street corner outside our apartment, and I went outside and I saw 3 police cars there. And thank God, we really don't have very much crime where we live, and I immediately assumed terrorism. There must be something going on with our lovely neighbors. And I asked the policeman, what's going on? And I saw that there was a group of these religious extremists that were blocking the road. It turns out they were demonstrating against grave desecration in Yafo. I'm not sure what that has to do with Beit Shemesh, but they were blocking the road. And I asked the policeman, what's going on? And they said to me, run, run, run. And I said, why should I run? And before they had a chance to answer, this hailstorm of rocks came flying down on us. I was actually hit in the leg by one of these rocks, bleeding. It was a whole episode. And the next morning, there were no headlines in the newspaper. Jews stoned Jews in Beit Shemesh. No one was talking about it. It's just something that we've accepted as part of our culture, that we can have this internal tension and polarization. And it bothered me very much. It bothered me very much, and I thought to myself, I hope there's something I can do about this. At that time, didn't think there was anything I could do. A little while later, I woke up for a morning jogging in the streets of Beit Shemesh, and I noticed that all over our community, there were these yellow signs, bright yellow signs, which said, in Hebrew, it's forbidden for women to walk on the street in clothing deemed immodest. And I'm thinking to myself, who put up these signs? Who thinks that they can tell other people in our city how they should dress, where they should walk? I was thinking about the women who usually walk on these streets and jog on these streets or bicycle on these streets, and what does this make them feel like? I went to work. I came home from teaching that day, and the signs were still there. And it really bothered me. And I didn't have anyone on my phone that I could call in politics or anyone who could help us with the situation. So I took my first political act in Israel, if you could call it that, and I went to the store and I bought spray paint. And I got up early in the morning and I went around the neighborhood and spray painted over all the signs. And a few days later, the signs came back, and the truth is our whole neighborhood was getting upset about it, and we actually developed a team to try to spray paint over the signs. They came back again. And then, spray paint actually costs a lot more money than we had realized. We were going through canister after canister of spray paint. So the third time, we got up in the morning, and we just spray painted over the last 2 words on the signs. And now the signs read, it's forbidden for women to walk on the street in clothing. And an amazing thing happened. The signs disappeared, and for the most part, they didn't come back. And it was an incredibly empowering moment, because here we are, and certainly for myself, a new immigrant in this country, very poor Hebrew, we'll get back to that in a moment, no connections to get anything done, but we stood up against people who were bullying against us, and this continued throughout the tensions that we experienced at Beit Shemesh. They really thought that we were going to run away. They thought we would move away and they would take over our neighborhood. And I actually I tried to be a mediator. I came with this very American and perhaps also Australian, can't we all just get along approach? We'll sit together, we'll talk, we'll sing a little bit, and we'll walk away best of friends. And I failed miserably in that mission and became an activist against the extremism. And at a certain point in this process, as the issues of Beit Shemesh got more difficult, I realized that there was a hole, a gaping hole in Israeli politics. In May 1948, David Ben-Gurion stood up and very courageously declared Israel as a Jewish state, not defining at all what a Jewish state means, a Jewish state that gives full rights to minorities in Israel. And according to some of his diary recordings, it seems that he thought that by November of that year, we would have peace with our Arab neighbors, and at that point we'd start working on who we are as a Jewish country. And we haven't had peace from that moment until today, and we've never really addressed this question about what does it mean to have a Jewish state. And I've done this exercise in schools throughout the world where I go and speak, and I ask the students, what does a Jewish state mean to you? And we usually get at least 10 different answers in the room about what a Jewish state should mean, ranging from just a place where any Jew can run to and get automatic citizenship, to a place that should be run by halakha, and everything in between. But because we haven't had that conversation, we've really allowed ourselves to pull apart from within. And we've allowed Judaism in the Jewish state to be defined by politicians who are worried only about their narrow political goals. And as a result, Judaism has become a more extreme, stringent form of Judaism in Israel, instead of a Judaism that speaks to all of the masses, instead of a Judaism that's embracing and speaks to all. And as a result, I travel around Israel and I meet with young Israelis, especially young quote-unquote secular Israelis, and they say to me straight out, they say, we hate Judaism. Think about that for a moment. After 2,000 years, we've returned home, we're building a Jewish state, and thousands of young people are saying that we hate Judaism. But there's a second part to what they say. They also say, and we hate that we hate Judaism. They're not looking for a way out, they're looking for a way in. And we, I say the collective we on the religious side, have very much closed that door, and we have to find a way to open it, and we have to find a way to bring them in. So I felt that it was important for there to be a religious voice saying, we have to find a way to work together. It shouldn't be religious against secular, secular against religious about every issue. We have to find a way to make things work and work together. So I wanted to get involved in politics. To be honest with you, I didn't for a moment, didn't think it would be even possible to serve as a member of Knesset. The first major barrier was certainly the Hebrew. Here I am, a product of 12 years of Jewish day school, studied well, worked hard, got good grades. Can't really speak Hebrew. I can say some basic things here and there. So I was afraid of that. We'll get back to that in a moment also. Culturally, the Knesset, a place where the screaming and yelling and the arguments, and I'm this quiet American who raises my hand and says, please, excuse me, and thank you, and interned in Congress in America when I was younger, where one time somebody yelled, you lie, to the President of the United States, and it was a fiasco for months. I mean, the Knesset is every 15 minutes. So to function in that world, I didn't really think about being in the Knesset, I just wanted to be involved. I wanted to bring a voice from the religious side, which said, it's time for Achdut, it's time to try to work out these issues together. Around the time that I was considering this, Yair Lapid, who was really a pop star in Israel, rated as the most popular Israeli before he went into politics, He was starting a new party. And all I had heard about Yair, I didn't know him at all. I certainly, his TV show was Ulpan Shishi on Friday night. I never saw his show. All I heard was negative. I heard that Yair was anti-Haredi, anti-Torah, anti-religion. He's an anti-Semite. These are the things that you hear. And I was very fortunate, and if any of you follow Israeli politics, and certainly now Yair has announced he's a candidate for Prime Minister, and in all the polls it shows that he is the alternative to Prime Minister, you should watch this video if you remember. It's Yair Lapid at Kiryat Ono. He gave a speech to Haredim. This is before he announced he was going into politics, and a friend of mine sent me this video. And in this speech, he gave this brilliant history of the Haredi community, going back to the Chatam Sofer, and the whole idea of Chadash Asur Min HaTorah, we can't do any new things. He really nailed it in terms of where the Haredi community was coming from. He also talked about the secular founders of the State of Israel, who were people who wanted a state devoid of Torah, devoid of God, devoid of mitzvot. And there was a battle between the religious and secular communities in Israel in its founding. Yair Lapid looked at this group of Haredim, and he said these two words which echo in my ears all the time. He said, Atem nitzachtem. You won. There is God in Israel, there is Torah in Israel, there is mitzvah observance in Israel, and we, as secular Israelis, are not looking to change that. We respect that. All we're asking of you on the religious side is respect who we are, and don't try to force us to be like you. And he said it's time for us to work together. It's time to lay down our arms and secular and religious Israel work together on these issues. And for me, I saw this hand coming out from the secular side of Israel saying, let's work together, and I wanted to grab the other side of that hand. So without going into the entire story, there was a complicated series of steps that I took to try to reach out to Yair Lapid, including writing this email in my broken Hebrew to an email that I found, lapidteam@gmail.com. And someone answered. A few weeks later, I got an email, and they said, come and meet with us. At that time, Yair's staff was 3 volunteers working out of a room in a law firm in Tel Aviv that they were renting. And I went and I met with them, and eventually brought Yair Lapid to Beit Shemesh, and I got an hour with Yair to speak with him, get to know him a little bit, an incredible hour. In the first few moments of that meeting, I had a very sad thought. Here I was at that point living in Israel for close to 8 years, and I'm a friendly guy. I say good morning, Shabbat Shalom to everyone that I see. This was the first time that I was sitting with someone secular and having a real conversation about what do we want out of this country. And that's sad. It's tragic. Because how are we going to ever resolve our issues if we're not even talking to each other and there's no method of communication? So we talked for about an hour. At the end of the hour, Yair says to me, Dov, we come from different planets. You're Orthodox from Silver Spring, Maryland. I'm secular from an aristocratic family in Tel Aviv. But we agree about 80% of the issues. We agree. And on 20% we disagree, sometimes very strongly. He said, an Israeli culture has told us we have to be against each other and just clash and get nowhere in the process. Let's break down that barrier. Let's find a way to work together. It won't be easy on the 20%. But let's sit together and try to find compromise and try to make things work in this country. And in the end, Israel will not look 100% the way perhaps he wants it to look or how I want it to look, but at least we'll have found a way to get along. I said, Yair, it's music to my ears. I want to get involved. I established a branch of Yesh Atid in Beit Shemesh. At a certain point, some of Yair's advisors asked for my resume, and I realized they were actually considering me for the list for Knesset. I sat there and I got invited to the famous coffee with Yair in Ramat Aviv on October 17th and, in 2012, and he asked me to be on the list for Knesset. And he offered me to be number 17 on the list, which was not realistic on any level, according to any of the polls at the time. It was a brand new party, polling at about 5 or 6 seats. I said, Yair, I accept this with such honor. I said, I know that I won't be a member of Knesset, that's fine. I just want to be involved and have a say, especially in issues related to the Haredi community, the Haredim in the draft, Charedim in general studies, Charedim in the workforce, all these religion and state issues about Shabbat in Israel, conversion, marriage. I want to be involved in this process. And he says to me, Dov, you're going to be in. I said, yeah, you really don't have to say that. It's really fine. And he said, you'll see. And we went on this incredible 3-month election campaign where I left my little English-speaking bubble in Beit Shemesh, and I met Israel. Day and night, going through shopping malls, going into schools, going into universities, debates, parlor meetings, and it was so special just to touch and meet the people of Israel from every single background. And I always say, people say we have no natural resources in Israel. The natural resources are the incredible people. Just such resilience and such incredible life stories. And it touched me so deeply to just recognize the country in which I live. We went through the campaign, worked really hard. The day before the election, the Jerusalem Post called me, and they said that according to their polling data, my spot has become realistic. My head started spinning. I really was not even considering that I was going to be a member of the Knesset. My head started spinning. I dropped everything that night and went to the Kotel and prayed my heart out for this opportunity. I sent a text message to Yair Lapid from the Kotel saying, Yair, I want you to know that I'm here at the Kotel. I'm praying for myself, praying for you, praying for the party. He's always responsive. This response came within 5 seconds. I was number 17 on the list. Boaz Toporowski was number 18 on the list. Yair wrote back to me, Dov, itcha kvar sagarti, achshav ani oved al Toporowski. He said, you're a done deal, you're in, now we're working on spot number 18. And there we were on election night, celebrating 19 seats, second largest party in the Knesset, and it was an incredible euphoria. And then the next morning, we went to work. All 19 of us were new to the Knesset, so we went to Knesset school. They brought in experts for a week long. I went to Johns Hopkins University for graduate school. It was pretty intense. There was nothing like this week. The amount of information that we were digesting. You go to that beautiful building every day, and we do what? What does it mean to be a member of Knesset? You have an idea. How do you take that idea and make it into a law? What are all the committees and all the responsibilities and the shdulot, the lobbies, the caucuses? Really, so much information to learn. Got all that information. We had another week before the inauguration. And I came home one day and found a letter from the Knesset. I was so excited, an official letter from the Knesset. And I remember exactly where I was standing because it was so traumatic. The letter said that according to Israeli law, it's forbidden for me to be sworn in as a member of Knesset as long as I'm still holding citizenship in another country. I come from a very patriotic American family. My father, blessed memory, was a judge in the federal government. My father-in-law was a chaplain in the U.S. Army for 30 years. My wife grew up many years in U.S. Military Academy in West Point, very American family. And I had to go to the American Embassy to renounce my citizenship. There were 2 of us who had to do it. For those of you who know Israeli politics, who get a kick out of the story, it was myself and Naftali Bennett. Naftali was like, throwing a kiddish. He was so happy to get rid of this foreign citizenship thing, and I was so traumatized by it. I got through it, and I have to tell you that a few hours later, there was something pretty special to think that 2,000 years ago, my ancestors were citizens of a commonwealth of some sort in Israel, and here I am, and I'm Israeli. And yes, I have to wait in the long line when I go back to visit America. And there was a period of time when I was frustrated that I didn't have a vote in the US elections. Not anymore. Quite happy that I can watch this one as a spectator. But I'm Israeli, and there's really something special about that. Hebrew. I was so scared and nervous about being put in this public eye and the need to speak Hebrew. I made history in the Knesset. The Knesset gives every single member a budget to learn a second language. Most use it for English, some use it for Arabic, some for Russian. I was the first member of Knesset ever to use that budget for Hebrew. And every single Sunday at 2:30, my tutor Nadav came, and he drilled me, and he worked me hard, and you can see the transformation as time went along. Zachar Nekeva, oh my goodness, What a challenge, and you finally master it, and then you find out that the numbers are exactly the opposite of what it should be. It's such a nightmare. I actually wanted to pass legislation in the Knesset that the numbers should be the way they should be, so that I could be right 100% of the time. In the Knesset, it bothered me, and I'm sure you all have this experience in Israel, everyone, from security guards to the Prime Minister, talked to me in English. And it made me crazy. Why is everybody talking to me in English? And I tell all the students this story, by the way. I told the students here this story on Friday as well. We think it's because our Hebrew is so bad that they're talking to us in English when we speak Hebrew in Israel. So I asked Nikki Levy, who was the former chief of police in Yerushalayim and deputy finance minister, I said, why is everybody talking to me in English? Is my Hebrew so bad? And he said, Dov, your Hebrew is incredible. You're in this country 9 years. We love hearing you speak Hebrew. Everyone talks about it. Your Hebrew is great, and it's courageous that you try to speak in Hebrew. I said, so why is everybody talking in English? He said, Dov, Israelis just love speaking English. We love feeling like a part of that Western world, and this is our way of connecting. And don't take it in any way personally. And it was very good for me to hear that, and it filled me with confidence, and it gave me the ability to get up and to speak in Hebrew. I can tell you, the day of the inauguration, all I had to say was 2 words. But I know that they were 2 words on national TV. Everyone is watching. They read the oath of office, and every member of Knesset stands up and says, Mitchayev ani. I obligate myself. And they go down in alphabetical order. So I'm Lamed, I'm smack in the middle. And the nerves that I had just to stand up and say Mitchayev ani, I was so nervous that I was going to somehow botch this and say something wrong. And thank God I said it right. And thank God I have reached the point through very hard work where I don't feel that my Hebrew is where my English is, but I can communicate and express myself as best as I can. Going to work in the Knesset every single day, I have to tell you, was the greatest blessing imaginable. To go and be a part of, not just sitting back at the Shabbat table and complaining about what's happening in my country, but to actually go every day and try to work and make a difference. There's no greater blessing in the world. It's an incredible place. Behind all the cynicism and all the corruption that you read about in the newspapers, it's a place for the most part filled with really good people who are trying to do really good things. And even those who you disagree with ideologically, you become their good friends. Some of my closest friends, my closest friend actually is an atheist communist who's sitting in the Joint Arab List. Dov Chenin, we became very good friends. He's such a great person who's totally off politically in my mind, but we really are able to get along with one another. It's a beautiful message where you can see behind all that you see in public. We live in the most incredible of times. And we're in a room here with a few hundred educators. This is something which we have to communicate to our students. The most incredible time in Jewish history where there was so much opportunity. And I ask all of you, first and foremost, find a way to make teaching Hebrew a priority, real priority, so that all students can be totally functional when they visit Israel, serve in Israel, live in Israel. That's number 1. Number 2, Israel education, Israel advocacy, whether they're going to learn about Israel so they can come to Israel or advocate for Israel all around the world. That has to be a priority. And number 3, I was looking through one of my yearbooks, and one of my 12th grade English teacher wrote in my yearbook, "See you as a U.S. Senator one day." And I thought about that, and I said to myself, I don't even remember it so well, but giving our students a feeling of empowerment, that they can be great. They might not be hearing it from home so much, and parenting is lacking a lot in these days, but we as educators, you can instill your children with a feeling that they can accomplish anything, and fill them with that. And my closing anecdote to start the conference. 30 years ago, I was a young teenager in Maryland, and they brought us to demonstrate outside the Soviet embassy in Washington, D.C. for Soviet Jewry, something that many of you in this room, your parents, your grandparents were certainly involved with. And one of those times, we did a silent rally, and we stood there with signs across the street from the embassy. My sign said, "Free Yuli Edelstein. Shir ha'ma'alot b'shuv Adonai shivat Zion hayinu kechomim." The return of the people of Israel to Zion were like dreamers. 30 years after that moment, I was blessed to sit as a member of Knesset, and Yuli Edelstein was the speaker of the Knesset. 30 years beforehand, I'm a regular American kid, not thinking about politics, nothing about Aliyah. Yuli is languishing away in a prison cell in Siberia. And 30 years later, we're reunited in the Jewish state, in the Jewish capital, in the Jewish parliament, myself as a member and Yuli as the speaker. We live in the most incredible times where anything is possible, incredible time of blessing. Hopefully we can convey that message to our students, let them realize that we can accomplish anything, and we as educators should realize that nothing is impossible for us as well. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful conference, everybody.